The war chamber of the Vorthak High Command pulsed with silver-purple light, the harsh glow of tactical holograms casting jagged shadows across the armored walls. Commander Vorgel stood motionless at the strategium, his chitinous plates shifting with barely restrained irritation as the data streams flickered before him. The scent of ozone and weapon-grade lubricants hung thick in the air, mingling with the low hum of the fortress power core, a sound like a distant starship engine forever on the verge of ignition. Across the chamber, the High Council of the Vorthak Dominion lounged in their command thrones, their armored forms draped in ceremonial battle. Weave their laughter was a grating metallic sound, the vibration of it setting Vorgel's mandibles on edge. "You cannot be serious," hissed Counselor Drax, his violet ocular implants narrowing in amusement. "You propose diverting an entire battle fleet to this Sol system. For what? A species that still clings to chemical propulsion?" A ripple of derisive clicks echoed through the chamber. Vorgel's claws flexed against the strategium's edge, the alloy groaning under the pressure. The holographic projection before him displayed the latest reconnaissance data, grainy, intercepted transmissions from the human homeworld, primitive orbital stations, fragile-looking vessels with laughably slow acceleration curves. And yet, they are a Deathworld species, Vorgel growled, his voice a subsonic rumble. The laughter died instantly. Gromnock, the Dominion's lead xenobiologist, stepped forward, his data slate flickering with analysis. Confirmed gravity, Phe standard, atmospheric composition, borderline toxic, predatory biomass ratio, Phe. Their evolutionary history suggests irrelevant, snapped High Overseer Krazak, waving a clawed hand. A species that has not even mastered warp containment is no threat. Their military, he spat the word like a curse, is a joke. Look at them. The hologram shifted, displaying human soldiers in training. They ran through obstacle courses, scaled cliffs with bare hands, endured simulated vacuum exposure with nothing but thin masks. The Vorthak commanders watched, their amusement returning. "They train like beasts," sneered Drax. "No shielding, no powered armor, just flesh and desperation." Vorgel's gaze lingered on one particular figure, a human female, her dark skin sheened with sweat as she dragged a wounded comrade through simulated artillery fire. Her expression was not fear, not pain. Determination. Gromnock's voice was quieter now, hesitant. "Their resilience metrics are anomalous. Their pain tolerance exceeds even our shock troopers and their endurance." "Ina," Krazak interrupted, "if you fear these creatures so much, Vorgel, take your fleet. Crush them, but do not waste the Council's time with superstition." The dismissal was final. The holograms winked out, the chamber emptied, leaving Vorgel alone with the silence and the weight of a decision pressing against his thorax. He turned to the viewport, where the distant stars burned cold and indifferent. Somewhere out there, in a system the Vorthak had deemed insignificant, a species they mocked as primitive was waiting, and Vorgel could not shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to learn exactly why Deathworlders were feared. Section Phe. Boots on the ground, the Vorthak assault carrier Silverspike tore through the void, its brutalist hull shimmering under the reflected light of a dying star. Inside, Commander Vorgel stood motionless in the war room, his clawed hands clasped behind his back as tactical holos flickered before him. The data streams pulsed silver, purple, casting jagged shadows across his chitinous face. His mandibles twitched. The human colony, designated Outpost Sol-9, was a speck on the galactic fringe, barely worth noting, a cluster of domes and prefab structures clinging to the irradiated surface of a moon. The Vorthak High Command had laughed when they saw the scans. This was what Gromnock had warned them about. These flimsy habitats, these soft-bodied creatures who still used atmospheric seals instead of proper void, hardened alloys. Yet something gnawed at him. The humans had not fled. They had not surrendered. They had not even responded to the Vorthak's hails. A low hum vibrated through the deck as the Silver Spike entered low orbit. The assault pods, sleek, dagger-shaped dropships, hung in their launch bays, their energy cores thrumming with readiness. Vorgel's warriors stood in perfect ranks, their exoskeletons gleaming under the harsh violet light of the ship's interior. They were eager, confident. They had crushed a dozen species before this. What were humans compared to the crystalline horrors of Zenthus Prime? The plasma-wreathed leviathans of the Cathari abyss. Vorgel exhaled through his ventral vents. The first wave hit the moon's surface in a storm of ionized dust and kinetic fury. The Vorthak warriors fanned out in textbook formation, their pulse rifles humming, their armored boots kicking up swirls of gray regolith. The human colony lay ahead, silent. Still, no defensive turrets, no energy shields, just those pathetic domes, their transparent panels reflecting the sickly glow of the system's star. Then the ground moved. A Vorthak shock trooper, Vekthar, third blade of the seventh claw, stumbled as the earth beneath him shifted. His mandibles flared in alarm, his rifle snapped up, scanning. A hand erupted from the dust, streaked with dirt and dried blood. It clamped around his ankle and yanked. Vekthar had time to let out a single, truncated shriek before he was dragged under. The soil swallowed him whole. His squad mates whirled, their weapons spitting violet plasma. But the ground was already still, as if nothing had happened. Then the real attack began. From beneath the dust, from hidden tunnels and trenches, no scanner had detected, humans rose like vengeful specters. They wore no powered armor. Their weapons were crude by Vorthak standards, ballistic rifles, slug, throwers, even blades. But they moved wrong, too fast, too fluid. Their eyes burned with something the Vorthak had only ever seen in the most feral of predators. A human female, Major Rebecca Reynolds, though the Vorthak did not yet know her name, emerged from a camouflaged bunker, her face smeared with ash, her rifle already barking fire. A Vorthak warrior collapsed, his thorax blown open by a high-velocity round. Another fell, his helmet shattered by a knife, thrown with impossible precision. The Vorthak lines wavered. This was not war as they understood it. This was butchery. Back aboard the Silver Spike, Vorgel watched the carnage unfold through the retinal feeds of his dying warriors. His claws dug into the command console, leaving deep gouges in the metal. Gromnock had been right. The humans were not just resilient, they were terrifying, and they had been waiting for this fight their entire lives. The Vorthak assault had been meticulously planned, a surgical strike against what their intelligence had labeled a soft human outpost. The Silver Spike had descended from the void, like a blade of dark steel, its silver-purple energy cores humming with lethal intent. The landing force had disembarked in perfect formation, their armored carapaces gleaming under the dim red sun of this backwater world. They had expected resistance. They had not expected this. The first wave died in seconds. Human defenses erupted from the earth itself, hidden trenches, automated turrets, and snipers positioned in the skeletal remains of what the Vorthak had assumed were abandoned structures. The humans did not fight from a distance like civilized species. They lured the Vorthak in, let them believe they had the advantage, and then slaughtered them. Vorthak warriors, bred for war, trained in the harshest combat simulations the Empire could devise, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Their energy rifles, designed to pierce through reinforced bulkheads, were useless against the humans' erratic, unpredictable movements. The humans did not stand and fight. They flowed, darting between cover, vanishing into smoke, reappearing where they were least expected. And when they struck, they did so with a brutality that bordered on artistic. Major Rebecca Reynolds moved like a storm given flesh. Her rifle barked in short, controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark with terrifying precision. A Vorthak warrior lunged at her, his plasma blade humming with violet energy, only for her to sidestep, twist, and drive her combat knife up through his throat. The alien gurgled. his mandibles twitching in shock as she ripped the blade free and fired 2 rounds into his skull before he hit the ground. She didn't pause, didn't hesitate. She had been trained for this since birth. Corporal Michael Carter fought like a man possessed. He had lost his helmet in the initial barrage, his face streaked with blood and grime. His rifle had jammed 3 minutes into the engagement, so he had discarded it without a second thought and picked up a fallen Vorthak energy blade. The weapon was too large, too unwieldy for human hands. But Carter adapted. He swung it like an axe, cleaving through armor with raw animalistic strength. A Vorthak officer, his carapace adorned with command sigils, leveled a disruptor pistol at him. Carter didn't flinch. He charged. The disruptor fired. Carter's left shoulder exploded in a burst of seared flesh and bone. He didn't stop. He buried the stolen blade in the officer's chest with a roar that echoed across the battlefield. Back aboard the Silver Spike, Vorgel watched the feeds with mounting horror. His warriors were dying, not in honorable combat, not in the glorious exchanges of fire that the Vorthak revered, but in ambushes, in close quarters butchery that left them torn apart, their bodies littering the battlefield like broken machinery. And the humans, they were laughing, not in mockery, not in cruelty, as if this was what they had been born to do. Gromnock, the scientist, stood beside him, his secondary limbs twitching in agitation. "They are not just surviving," he hissed, his voice a whisper of static through his vocal modulator. "They are thriving. This is their natural state." Vorgel's claws flexed, the metal of the command console groaning under the pressure. He had thought the humans weak. He had been wrong. They were not weak, they were awake. And now, for the first time in centuries, the Vorthak Empire knew fear. On the surface, the battle raged on. The humans did not yield. They did not retreat. They hunted. And the Vorthak, for all their might, for all their technology, had just realized one terrible truth. They were not the predators here. They were the prey section. Faye, the betrayal, the Vorthak command ship Dreadstar hung in orbit, like a blade poised over the throat of the world. Its silver-purple hull pulsed with weaponized energy, the dark steel plating scored from earlier skirmishes with human orbital defenses. Inside the war room, Vorgel stood motionless, his armored carapace reflecting the violet glow of tactical holograms. The battle data streamed before him, loss percentages, casualty reports, energy expenditure. All of it damning. They had come to conquer. They were being erased. Gromnock's secondary limbs twitched as he interfaced with the data stream, his neural tendrils flickering with agitated energy. The scientist had spent cycles studying Deathworlds, cataloging the horrors of gravity wells and predator, dense ecosystems. But this was something else. The humans did not just endure their world. They harnessed it. Their soldiers moved with a fluidity that bordered on instinct, their tactics shifting mid-battle, as if war itself was a language they had spoken since birth. "We miscalculated," Gromnock transmitted through the command net, his voice a subvocal hum of distress. "Their physiology adapts in real time. Their neural plasticity, it's beyond anything in the archives." Vorgel's claws flexed. He had seen the footage from the surface. Human soldiers dragging their wounded behind cover, not in retreat, but to redeploy. A squad of their elite designated Sol Marines by intercepted transmissions had held a choke point for 17 standard cycles against an entire Vorthak assault column. They had run out of ammunition, so they used their knives. And when those broke, they used their hands. Now, the Dreadstar's scanners picked up a new signal. A single human dropship, unmarked, streaking toward their position. No escort, no bombardment prep, just one vessel, moving too fast for interception protocols to lock on. Their boarding, a junior officer's thought, pulse flickered with disbelief. Vorgel's mandibles tightened. No, not boarding. The human stood in the center of the war room, her posture relaxed, her eyes scanning the assembled Vorthak officers like a mathematician evaluating variables. Major Rebecca Reynolds wore no armor, carried no visible weapon, just a black uniform, its fabric still smoldering from re-entry heat. She should have been dead. The atmospheric friction alone should have reduced her to ash, yet here she was. "You invaded our world," she said, her voice calm, almost conversational. "You thought we'd break." The translation matrix rendered her words in cold, precise Vorthak battle. "Can't." Gromnock's neural tendrils flared. "Your species was classified as pre-unification. Your technology was never the point," Reynolds interrupted. She tilted her head, studying Gromnock as if he were a specimen under glass. "You looked at our guns, our ships. You didn't look at us." A silence. The Dreadstar's alarm screamed to life. Vorgel's tactical display lit up with incoming signatures. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. Human warships, emerging from the system's asteroid belt, their drives flaring like newborn stars. They had been hiding. "You wanted a war," Reynolds said, stepping forward. The Vorthak guards raised their plasma casters, then froze as the ship's gravity fluctuated. Human gravity mines latched onto the hull. "But you don't understand war. Not like we do." Vorgel's mind raced. This was impossible. Their scans had shown nothing but scattered human resistance. A fractured species, barely spacefaring. The humans had let them land. Let them commit their forces. Now the trap closed. Reynolds smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Welcome to hell," she said. Outside the viewports, the stars went dark as the human fleet opened fire. Section Fe. No rules left. The first railgun round struck the Dreadstars forward, shield array like a god's hammer. Vorgil felt it before he saw it. The deck plating beneath his feet buckled, throwing him against the command throne as the impact resonated through the ship's superstructure. The shield flared violet, then shattered in a cascade of dying energy, leaving the hull naked beneath the storm of human fire. His tactical display was chaos. Human warships, sleek, angular things, their hulls blackened by stealth coatings, swarmed like predators. They moved wrong. No formation, no disciplined lines of battle. They danced, spiraling through the void in patterns that defied Vorthak predictive algorithms. Gromnock's voice crackled over the comm, strained with something Vorgil had never heard from him before. "Their weapons, Captain, their weapons don't make sense." Vorgil's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. He had seen human ballistics before, crude chemical, propelled slugs, laughable against Vorthak shielding. But these were something else. The railguns fired at relativistic speeds, their projectiles wrapped in gravity distortions that punched through armor like it was wet parchment. Plasma lances carved glowing scars across the Dreadstar's flank, their heat signatures spiking beyond anything Vorthak cooling systems were rated for. The boarding pods, they came without warning, streaking through the void like bullets, slamming into the Dreadstar's hull with magnetic clamps before the point. Defense could lock on. The outer decks screamed as the humans breached. Vorgil's blood ran cold. He had expected soldiers. What came through the bulkheads was something else entirely. Clad in powered armor blacker than the void, their visors glowing a dull, hateful red, the humans moved like nightmares given form. Their weapons weren't just guns, they were tools of slaughter. Monomolecular blades hummed through the air, shearing through Vorthak combat armor as if it were paper. One warrior, just one, tore through an entire security detail, his movements a blur of controlled, brutal efficiency. And then there were the others, the ones without helmets. Their faces were bare, their eyes alive with something Vorgil couldn't name. Anticipation. Reynolds stood among them, her sidearm holstered, her hands empty. She didn't need a weapon. The ship itself was her weapon now. "You thought we were weak," she said, stepping over the twitching corpse of a Vorthak guard. "Because we don't fight like you, because we don't have rules." Vorgil's tactical feed flickered as another railgun barrage struck home. The Dreadstar's secondary reactors went critical, flooding the lower decks with radiation. Alarms wailed, systems failed, and still, the humans advanced. Gromnock's voice was a whisper now. They're not just boarding us, they're dismantling us. Vorgil understood too late. This wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration. The humans had let them come, let them believe in their own superiority, and now, they were showing them the truth. Outside the viewport, the last of the Vorthak escorts died in a silent bloom of fire, torn apart by weapons that had no right to exist. Reynolds tilted her head, watching him. "There are no rules left," she said softly. "Welcome to our war." The lights went out, and the screaming began. Section Fae. The scars speak. The darkness aboard the Dreadstar was not merely an absence of light. It was a living thing, a predator that slithered through the corridors, swallowing the screams of the dying. The humans had killed the lights first, as if they had known how much the Vorthak relied on their enhanced optics. How the sudden blindness would fracture their discipline. Vorgil's claws scraped against the command console, his secondary eyelids flicking open in vain. The emergency luminescence of his HUD cast jagged violet shadows across his face, but it was useless. The humans had hacked their systems, turning their own technology against them. The ship's internal sensors flickered with ghost signals, heat signatures that vanished as soon as they appeared. Movement where there should have been none. They were ghosts, Gromnock's. Voice crackled over the failing comms, distorted by interference. There in the vents, the maintenance shafts everywhere. Vorgil snarled, his spines flaring. The Vorthak were warriors, bred for conquest, their bodies reinforced with military-grade augments, their minds honed for war. Yet these humans, these soft-skinned, fragile creatures, moved through his ship like shadows, striking and fading before his warriors could react. A burst of gunfire echoed from the lower decks, followed by a wet, guttural scream that cut off abruptly. The humans didn't fight with honor. They didn't announce themselves with battle cries or stand in formation. They slit throats in the dark. They sabotaged life support. They burned. And then, silence. Too long, too deliberate. Vorgil's pulse hammered in his secondary heart. He had faced the Kralix horde in the burning ruins of Zenthis Prime. He had dueled a Zerethian warbringer in single combat and torn its spine out with his bare claws. But this was not war as he knew it. This was butchery. A shape detached itself from the shadows near the ruined blast door. Major Rebecca Reynolds stepped forward, her armor streaked with soot and alien blood, her rifle slung casually over one shoulder. She wasn't even breathing hard. Behind her, two more humans emerged, Corporal Carter and another Marine, their faces hidden behind visors that gleamed like insect eyes in the dim light. Vorgil's warriors tensed, their weapons humming to life. But Reynolds didn't flinch. She just tilted her head, studying him the way a predator might study wounded prey. "You still don't understand," she said, her voice calm, on a palmburst conversational. "This isn't about strength, it's about endurance." She reached up and unsealed her helmet. The Vorthak recoiled. Her face was wrong, not smooth and unblemished, like the diplomats they had seen in the Federation's transmissions, but scarred, ridged with old burns, a jagged line running from her temple to her jaw. The flesh there pale and twisted. Her left eye was cybernetic, its lens flickering with targeting data. Gromnock made a choked noise. "You're kind, you're supposed to be weak, frail." Reynolds smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "We are," she agreed. "That's why we survive." She tapped a finger against one of the scars. This one, plasma burn, took 6 months to regraft the skin. Another scar, this, Kralix claw, nearly took my arm off. She tilted her head, exposing the cybernetic ports along her neck. And these standard neural upgrades, every Marine gets them after their first tour. Vorgil's blood ran cold. She wasn't boasting, she was explaining. Humans didn't come into the world strong. They became strong, through pain, through loss, through surviving things that should have killed them, and they remembered. Outside the viewport, the wreckage of the Vorthak fleet burned in the void, their silver-purple hulls torn open like gutted prey. Reynolds sealed her helmet again. "Now," she said softly, "let's talk surrender." The lights flickered back on. The corridor behind her was littered with bodies. None of them were human. Section Fey, silent hunters. The Vorthak command bunker was a tomb of flickering silver-purple light. Vorgil stood motionless before the tactical display, his armored claws flexing against the console. The holographic projection painted his face in jagged violet shadows. The last remnants of his fleet reduced to scattered debris fields. The humans had done this, not with overwhelming numbers, not with superior technology. They had done it by hunting. Gromnock's voice crackled through the calm, strained with something Vorgil had never heard from a Vorthak scientist before. "Fear. Commander, the humans. They aren't just boarding, they're infesting." Vorgil's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a fraction of a second, a reflexive gesture of disbelief. He pulled up the internal security feeds and saw the truth. The humans moved like ghosts. Not in the orderly, disciplined formations of Vorthak shock troops. Not in the predictable, honor-bound advances of the Kasari legions. They slithered through ventilation shafts too narrow for any civilized species. They melted out of shadows where no living thing should have been able to hide. They struck in perfect silence. No battle cries, no warnings. Just the whisper of monofilament blades and the wet crunch of severed arteries. One feed showed a human, just one dropping from a ceiling grate onto a full Vorthak patrol. The alien warriors barely had time to raise their plasma casters before the human was among them. A blur of black armor and controlled violence. A knife-hand strike crushed a windpipe. A boot shattered a knee joint with surgical precision. The last warrior managed to fire, once before the human wrenched his head sideways with a twist that snapped his spine like dry kindling. The human didn't pause, didn't celebrate, just vanished into the next corridor. Vorgil's blood ran cold. This wasn't war. This was butchery. Corporal Michael Carter exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the inside of his visor. The HUD painted the corridor ahead in shades of thermal green and motion. Tracked crimson, 4 Vorthak, heavy armor, plasma rifles charged and ready. He signaled to his squad with a series of hand gestures. Flank left. Suppress right, close and kill. No words. No unnecessary noise. Just the language of predators who had spent millennia perfecting the art of the ambush. The Vorthak never saw them coming. Carter's first shot took the lead warrior through the eye slit. The hypersonic round turning brain matter into vapor. His squad opened up in unison, their weapons tuned to frequencies that bypassed Vorthak shield harmonics. The aliens died without understanding why their defenses failed. One of them, young by the look of his unscarred carapace, managed to trigger a distress beacon before Carter put a round through his throat. The corporal watched him choke on his own blood, claws scrabbling at the wound. No pity, no hesitation, just the job. Gromnock's claws trembled as he analyzed the human armor schematics. The suits weren't just protection, they were weapons. Reactive musculature that amplified strength tenfold. Subdermal injectors flooding the wearer's veins with combat stimulants and pain suppressants. Neural interfaces that turned each Marine into a single, hyper-efficient killing machine. And the helmets. Gromnock's, frills flattened in horror. The human saw in spectrums no civilized species had ever needed. They could track prey by heartbeat, by the heat of breath, by the electrical impulses in a nervous system. These weren't soldiers, they were augmented nightmares. Reynolds stepped over the corpse of a Vorthak elite guard, her boots leaving smears of violet blood on the deck. The alien had died well, taken 3 rounds to the chest before going down. She respected that, but respect didn't change the outcome. Her HUD lit up with fresh contacts, reinforcements, pouring into the lower decks. She smiled behind her visor. Let them come. Let them see what humanity brought to the void. She keyed her squad channel, lock and load, Marines. The dark swallowed them whole, Section Fae. The kill switch. The Vorthak command bunker was a fortress of dark steel and violet energy conduits, its walls lined with the silver-purple glow of emergency lighting. The air hummed with the deep, resonant thrum of failing power cores. Systems pushed beyond their limits by the relentless human assault. Vorgil stood at the tactical holodisplay, his armored claws twitching over the controls. The projection flickered, its edges dissolving into static as the human jamming signals tore through their communications. The last of his elite guard lay dead in the corridor outside, their bodies cooling in pools of their own violet blood. He had underestimated them, a fatal mistake. Gromnock's frills trembled as he adjusted the scanner feed, his voice a whisper of disbelief. They're still advancing. Vorgil didn't need the confirmation. He could hear them, the rhythmic thud of armored boots, the sharp staccato bursts of human weaponry, each shot precise, each movement calculated. They moved like predators, cutting through his forces with terrifying efficiency. His claws tightened around the hilt of his plasma glaive. Activate the kill switch. Gromnock's head snapped up, his eyes wide. The scientist hesitated, only a second before his claws danced across the console. A deep, resonant pulse echoed through the bunker as the failsafe engaged. The walls vibrated, the silver-purple energy conduits, flaring brighter before dimming to an ominous crimson. Outside, the remaining Vorthak warriors stiffened. Their neural implants flared, overriding free will, flooding their systems with combat stimulants and pain inhibitors. Their movements became jerky, mechanical, no longer soldiers, but puppets of the kill protocol. Vorgil bared his teeth. Let the humans face this. Reynolds' HUD flickered as the energy surge rippled through the ship. Her visor compensated instantly, adjusting to the new threat signatures flooding the corridor ahead. Contact. Multiple hostiles. She didn't need the warning. The Vorthak came at them in a wave, their movements unnaturally synchronized, their violet eyes glowing with the same crimson hue as the failing lights. No hesitation, no fear. She raised her rifle and fired. The first shot punched through a warrior's chest, sending him sprawling. The second took the next in the throat. The third never landed. A Vorthak elite lunged, plasma glaive carving through the air where her head had been a second before. She twisted, driving her armored knee into his ribs, feeling the crack of exoskeleton beneath the impact. Her squad didn't falter. Carter moved like a shadow, his monomolecular blade flashing as it severed limbs and spines. The others followed, their weapons spitting death in controlled bursts. But the Vorthak didn't stop. They couldn't. Reynolds' lips curled behind her visor. Override protocols, she muttered. Cute. She switched firing modes. Her rifle's capacitor whined as it charged, the HUD flashing a single lethal warning. Anti-armor, engaged. The next shot didn't just kill. The hypersonic round struck the lead warrior center mass and detonated. The explosion vaporized him, and the three behind him, leaving nothing but scorched metal and drifting ash. The remaining Vorthak didn't flinch. They couldn't. Reynolds exhaled, steadying her aim. Her comms crackled. A new signal, unencrypted, a voice, Vorthak, but strained, desperate. Human commander. You don't understand what you've done. Reynolds didn't pause. She fired again. The corridor lit up in fire and fury, and the kill switch meant nothing. The Vorthak assault faltered, not from fear. Their neural overrides still forced them forward, limbs locked in relentless motion, but from sheer attrition. The corridor was a charnel house, littered with smoldering armor husks and the blackened remnants of warriors who had ceased to be soldiers and become mere obstacles in Reynolds' path. She stepped over them, her boots crushing fractured plating into the deck. The air stank of ionized metal and cooked flesh. Behind her, Carter and the remaining Marines advanced in staggered formation, their rifles sweeping for targets that no longer came. The Vorthak had thrown wave after wave into the kill zone. And now, finally, the tide had ebbed. But Reynolds didn't relax. She knew better. The Vorthak weren't retreating, they were regrouping. Her HUD flickered, damage reports, ammunition counts, the steady thrum of her suit's cooling systems working overtime. A warning flashed. External comms, active. Gromnock's voice still lingered in the channel, unshackled from encryption, raw with something between fury and disbelief. "You don't understand," he repeated, the words clipped, mechanical. "You've triggered the failsafe." Reynolds didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what she'd done. The Vorthak had designed their warriors to fight until death. No hesitation, no surrender. But she'd just proven that death wasn't a deterrent. Not for humans, not for creatures born on a world where survival meant outlasting tsunamis, supervolcanoes, and the teeth of predators that never stopped hunting. The Vorthak had built soldiers, Earth had forged monsters. A tremor ran through the deck, distant, at first, then closer, rhythmic, like the footfalls of something massive. Carter tensed. "Major, I see it." Her thermal sensors painted the outline before it rounded the corner. A hulking silhouette, twice the size of a standard warrior, its armor reinforced with jagged plating that pulsed with violet energy. Its weapon wasn't a rifle, it was a cannon, the barrel wide enough to fit a human skull inside. A Vorthak heavy Gromnock's voice crackled again. "Colder now. This is what happens when you refuse to die properly." The heavy raised its weapon. Reynolds didn't flinch. She'd faced worse, back on Earth. In the jungles of the Amazon exclusion zone, she'd fought Gene, spliced jaguars with reinforced bone claws. In the Martian dust storms, she'd held a bunker against rogue mining drones for 48 hours without sleep. This was just Tuesday. The cannon fired. The world turned white. The blast ripped through the corridor, shredding bulkheads and sending molten shrapnel screaming through the air. Reynolds' armor screamed with damage alerts. "Shield integrity, Faye." But she was already moving, rolling with the impact, her rifle coming up as the heavy advanced. It didn't expect her to still be standing. Its mistake. She squeezed the trigger. The hypersonic round punched through its chest plate, but didn't detonate. The heavy staggered, then righted itself, its systems rerouting damage, like a body ignoring pain. Reynolds exhaled. Persistent bastard. Then Carter was there, flanking left, his own rifle barking in short, controlled bursts. The rounds chewed into the heavy's joints, seeking weak points. One found purchase, a seam in the armor at the knee. The heavy lurched, its balance compromised. Reynolds didn't hesitate. She lunged, her combat knife, forged from carbon fiber alloy, edge honed to a molecule's width, slammed into the heavy's visor. The blade punched through, and she twisted, feeling the resistance give way, as optics shattered and neural feeds sparked. The heavy collapsed. Then, from the shadows, a sound. Not gunfire, not machinery. Gromnock stepped into the light, his forearms folded behind his back, his silver-purple armor pristine, where his warriors lay broken. His faceless helm tilted, studying Reynolds like a specimen under glass. "Fascinating," he murmured. "You fight like you're already dead." Reynolds yanked her knife free. "No," she wiped the blade clean on the heavy's corpse. "We fight like we've got nothing left to lose." Gromnock's stance shifted. Just slightly for the first time, Reynolds saw it. The flicker of doubt. The Vorthak had come expecting prey. They'd found predators instead, and Earth's predators always finish the hunt. Section. Faye. The lesson the Vorthak command bunker hummed with the low, pulsing thrum of silver-purple energy cores. Military-grade reactors built for war, not retreat. The walls, forged from dark steel alloys, absorbed sound like a tomb. Vorgil stood motionless before the holographic display, his armored fingers flexing in slow, controlled motions. The feed showed the aftermath of the engagement. Human soldiers moving through the wreckage of his elite warriors, their movements efficient, ruthless. Prey did not do this. Gromnock's voice crackled through the calm, his usual clinical detachment fraying at the edges. Their physiology is aberrant. Adrenaline response exceeds documented limits, pain tolerance suggests neural override capability, and their endurance. Vorgel silenced him with a gesture. He had seen. The humans should have broken. They should have been crushed under the weight of Vorthak's superiority, their primitive armor, their laughable kinetics, their reliance on melee weapons like some barbaric relic of a bygone era. Yet here they stood, unbroken, unbowed, and worse, adapting. The hologram flickered, replaying the moment Reynolds had dismantled his heavy assault unit. The way she moved, not with the mechanical precision of a warrior bred for war, but with something far more dangerous, improvisation. She fought like a creature that had clawed its way up an evolutionary ladder drenched in blood, where every misstep meant extinction. A Deathworlder, the realization settled in his gut like a blade. Outside, the battlefield was a graveyard of Vorthak steel. The humans had turned the station's corridors into killing fields. Every junction booby, trapped, every choke point a slaughterhouse. Corporal Carter moved through the wreckage, his rifle slung, a scavenged plasma torch in hand. His armor was scorched, one lens cracked, but his breathing was steady. He knelt beside a fallen Vorthak warrior, prying open the chestplate with practiced ease. The alien's violet blood had congealed in the artificial gravity, thick as oil. Carter didn't flinch, head seen worse in the slums of Mars. Reynolds, he combed, voice rough. Their power cores, they're unstable, overload them, and the chain reaction could take out half this deck. A pause, then Reynolds' voice, calm as a surgeon's hand. Good. Set charges, we're not leaving them anything. Gromnock's claws twitched over the console, his faceless helm reflecting the scrolling data. The humans weren't just winning, they were learning. Every engagement, every skirmish. They absorbed Vorthak tactics, weapon signatures, weaknesses, and then they improvised, his mandibles clenched. This wasn't war as the galaxy understood it. This was something older, darker. Vorgel activated the evacuation protocol. The order burned in his throat, a concession no Vorthak High Commander had ever made. But the humans had done the impossible. They had made him retreat. The station's alarms wailed, a piercing shriek of silver-purple light cascading through the corridors. The humans would hear it. They would know. And they would come. Reynolds did. She found Vorgel in the command nexus, his back to her, his massive frame silhouetted against the starfield beyond the viewport. He didn't turn. "You fight well," he said, the translator flattening his tone, "for prey." Reynolds didn't smile. She leveled her sidearm, a battered human pistol, its muzzle still smoking from the last firefight. "We're not prey," she said. The explosion ripped through the station's core, a chain reaction of dying Vorthak reactors detonating in a wave of violet fire. The humans made it to their dropship. Barely. Carter slumped in his harness, watching through the viewport as the alien fortress tore itself apart. "Think they'll get the message?" He rasped. Reynolds didn't answer. She didn't need to. The lesson was clear. The galaxy had thought humanity weak, fragile. Now it knew the truth. Earth's children didn't just survive Deathworlds, they conquered them. Epilogue, the signal, the wreckage burned for 3 standard cycles. From the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Reynolds watched the last of the Vorthak station's debris scatter into the void, its silver-purple energy cores flickering out like dying stars. The silence was thick, no distress calls, no reinforcements, just the quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible, a single burst of encrypted data fired into the black at speeds only a Vorthak beacon could achieve. Reynolds' console lit up, the translation algorithm scrambling to decode it. Carter limped over, his armor still scorched from the fight. "What is it?" The screen resolved. A single glyph, sharp, angular, unmistakably Vorthak, flashed once before dissolving into static. Reynolds knew that symbol. It wasn't a distress call. It was a declaration somewhere. Deep in the warrens of Vorthak High Command, a message had just been received. And for the first time in their empire's history, it carried the weight of something they had never given their enemies before. Recognition, Carter exhaled. Well, that's gonna complicate things. Reynolds leaned back in her chair, staring at the stars. She smiled.